Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased to be able to bring you these fine, thoughtful souls, each of whom brings their insights, their wisdom, and their poetic gifts to share with you. We're going to embark on a bit of a spiritual journey, some talking, and some thoughts about their experiences. And I know your own world and your own spiritual life will be enriched from this. Let me introduce these fine, fine people. My brother Rawle, I am James, who's joining us from the north, a man of great depth, whose work includes helping others to make more use of their own strengths in this sometimes crazy and yet wonderful world. My brother David Leo Sirois, poet, songster, a deep, thoughtful person with a great deal of experience in the spiritual world, with a variety of experiences in training. David brings us some very, very wonderful insights to our little adventure here together. My dear sister Alexandra, I'm so pleased you could join us, a woman of very, very deep thought and reflective, contemplative spirit who brings such flowers of poetry and art to us, and makes this world a more beautiful place. Thank you for joining us, Alexandra. My dear sister Debby, I can't tell you how happy I am that you could join us. You bring training, you bring experience, and a great spiritual light to our meeting today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. My dear brother, Lantern Carrier, who I know brings us just years of experience and training, and a voice we know, those of us in the world's poetry community, a voice of great wisdom always. And our brother Prasanna Kkumar, thank you so much for joining us, sir. I'm so glad you could come. So what we're going to start off with is I'm going to ask each of you to reflect on your spiritual lives. And you know, there are things that come to us subtly. There are things that arrive with a thunderclap and change us and shock us and surprise us and give us new insight. I'm going to ask each of you to go across the table here and mention briefly. Try to keep it to 5 minutes. I'll keep a timer and I'll wave my hand when the 5 minutes is up. So I'm going to ask you to think back to your spiritual lives, think back to your spiritual experiences, and think of one time when you really had quite a surprise, quite a shock from your spiritual learning, from your spiritual knowledge. And I'm going to start with you, Rawle, if I may. Brother, talk about your spiritual life and some experience, some part of that gave you quite a surprise, quite a shock, if there's something like that in your experience.
Yeah, thank you for this, Richard. Once again, thank you for gathering us to have these types of conversations and as well share poetry along the spiritual line. You know, for me, I think in the last time we did this, I mentioned back on December 17th, 2001 at 1:45 in the PM, I heard a voice that basically rocked my world. Previous to that, I was, I was a victim. I was a victim to life. And that moment was an invitation from my higher power to go, are you ready to understand life in a different way? You're ready to understand yourself in a different way. So where I am today is I believe everything that we do is spiritual. Everything, because I am spirit. I don't remember exactly when I had this thought, but it was probably a few years into this new spiritual awakening where I realized that everything I do is spiritual because I am spirit. I did not come to this plane, this world, this earth to be something that I'm already. I came to this world to master the physical understanding of my spirit through the experiences of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. So that's why I believe everything we do is spiritual, because I cannot know one without the other. I cannot know good without evil. I cannot know ugly without beautiful. And that was like a game changer for me. It took a lot of pressure off of me, actually, in regards to how I thought of myself, how I saw the world. It shaped a lot of my perceptions. As we were talking earlier, as I was saying to David, I was raised Christian. Like Lanton said, coming from a West Indian background, you don't have a choice. You know, here are your parents. You're now a Christian. But I've learned to let go of religion itself. I've kept God, and I've let go of religion, because for me, the designer of all of this, the one that has the ability to stand outside of time and space to create time and space, does not require anything from me, does not require me to go through tests, does not require to prove to me how powerful that entity is. Those moments, those epiphanies that I've had, was basically God saying, do you remember how powerful I made you? And that you are here for a purpose. From a philosophical standpoint, we can argue, why are we here? I don't know. I just know that I am here. I am conscious in this illusion. So everything that I do, everything that flows within me, that flows from me, that flows around me is spiritual, because I am spirit. I am the essence of God. I am the breath of God. And one day I will return to God before I go off to the next adventure. So, yeah, so, for me, when I think of spiritual, I just think of life. I think of the essence, the energy that's in this avatar that's walking around. This is called Rawle. The essence of who I am has no name. Just like when we pass on, I know I will meet you again, not in these physical understanding, but the energies that we are. Because we're never separated. Even in this illusion of separation, we are not separated, just like I can never be separated from God. So that's kind of how I look at things, how I've taken it, um, and accepting the invitation from God, from the universe, to understand myself in a different way. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
brother.
much. Thank you, brother. Wonderful. My brother David, sir, can you talk about one of those surprising insights that you had in your spiritual path?
Absolutely. So when I was about 30 years, I underwent a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and I would suddenly, my body would be thrown into some yogic position or another. My mouth would move of its own volition and say Om or other interesting, mantra type things, and uh, I could feel a fire in my spine. Uh, and it was so intense and so overwhelming that I was feeling out of control. I even uh, brought myself to an emergency room, not knowing what was happening. And a friend of mine sent me a book on Kundalini awakening. So anyhow, during that time, I was visiting Bennington College where I went, and a friend of mine, very spiritual friend, told me that she was about to go to New York State and meet a woman who is supposed to be enlightened. And she told me the next day, I think you're supposed to go. So I was a little bit of a space case at the time, and I said, okay, I will close my eyes and ask my soul. So I did. I did. And am I supposed to go? And I saw a big flash of white light and the word yes inside of it. And, a friend picked us up and took us down to the ashram where I eventually lived, Sri Muktananda Ashram, my guru's ashram, Guru Maharaj's ashram. And when I first saw her, I was just, oh my God, I was so completely taken. I mean, there's the reason why, Krishna is called Mohan, the stealer of hearts. And anyhow, so I was in a darshan line, and we all went up one by one in front of her to have a word or a look or some kind of blessing. And so I had told the hall monitor that I wanted to ask Guru Mai, will you let me follow you? And she said, well, why don't you ask it, inside yourself as you go up there? And so I did. And the first word my guru said to me, and she kind of put out a hand, extending it toward me. She said, student? So in that one word, she answered my question. I'm asking, will you let me follow you? And she's asking me to be her student. And then I bowed, I pranamed, and when I put my forehead to the ground, I saw a big flash of white light and the word yes in it. And so I knew everything had come together. And I'll just finish by saying that, so when I had gone through that flash of light and that feeling of I've come home, this is where I'm supposed to be, I sat down and we were all chanting in Sanskrit, and I just started crying and crying, bawling, and but the one thing that I felt happened was that all of my energies came into balance, and I was no longer burning up. I was no longer freaking out. I was no longer out of control with that Kundalini energy. I felt I'm home now. She's the guide of that light, that energy, and I'm safe. And everything has been smooth since then, learning from her for almost 30 years. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you. Alexandra, may I turn to you, my dear, and ask you the same question? In your spiritual training, your spiritual path, have you had one of those moments of just amazing insight and surprise?
Um, yeah, I also, like I said in the previous meeting, I've always been kind of weird anyway, and I was always kind of enclosed in my magical world. So I've gone through various innate sort of routines of my own, like meditating on my own in my room when I was at boarding school. Just many things that were totally innate to me. Never actually followed a spiritual leader in particular until in 2001. That's when I had a very, very strong vision, a very
Go
strong
ahead.
set. There's pots and pans in the back making. I had a very strong set of visions, which I just saw while I was awake. So I could see that there was a totally higher dimension full of light in those visions. One of them was someone just coming and kissing me on my forehead. The second one was I saw my sister who left me 2 weeks later, and she looked totally beautiful with golden hair. She had cancer at the time. And I've had visions which are mostly, I just see them, but I have also had auditory ones up on the mountains where I used to ride my horse on the island of Hydra. So that was kind of, I suddenly just realized, although I was always pretty much closed into my magical world, I also actually had a sort of validated insight into the other dimensions by having these visions of which were full of light. And what the name that came to me was they were from the absolute. I don't use the word God very much because it's been manipulated so much. I know that they say source a lot, but the word that came to me was the absolute, to apollyto in Greek. And I totally agree with Rawle that I don't follow any religion because religions have just been created to manipulate people. So I think everyone has the source of enlightenment within themselves. And I don't really think that there is a particular need for religions other than wars. But anyway, so yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alexandra. Debbie, may I turn to you, my dear, and ask you the same question? In your spiritual training, your spiritual path, have you had one of those moments of surprise and fresh insight?
Oh, thank you. Wow. Can't believe I'm among these esteemed like spiritual poets. I am a person who has just sort of stumbled through life. I'm ethnically Ashkenazi Jewish, 100%, quite assimilated into the dominant culture. I've always felt like I didn't fit in to any of the Abrahamic traditions, didn't really get much training in any of them, but was sort of inundated culturally with the Christian traditions and sort of longed for what, this isn't me. What am I? Who am I? So the who am I is something that called to me. What was fortunate with me is I live in Berkeley, California, where I've lived for over 60 years, which has been kind of an epicenter for a lot of heavy hitter teachers. I was fortunate enough to, when Adyashanti was just getting started, he used to give satsang at a little library community center down the road, and I had heard of him. Well, because I was moonlighting at a very important metaphysical bookstore, Shambhala Booksellers. So books are my path. Books have been my path. And then those books took me to where I could actually experience some of the teachings because I would learn of them. And so Adyashanti was the first time I sat with an enlightened master and just had some good chit chats, some good laughs. He's still quite dynamic presence on the planet. And I've been also fortunate enough to, as I was networking and lurking around and hanging out among like people that are either dabbling or they're masters, that I went and saw Bhagavan Das doing kirtan at another yoga center. And I went and, extrovert me, just chatting with him and telling him about my daughter and how well she was doing at the age of 16. And he's like, well, we should come and I'll give, God, my words are, what's the word?
A blessing?
Yeah, a blessing. No, there's a certain word. He came over, we did an entire ceremony and hundreds of roses. We strung them together in garlands. Puja, sorry. So we had puja at my house with just 3 or 4 people. We danced, we smoked weed, we drank wine. And this was after I had read his memoirs where he was talking about Neem Karoli Baba and how everything changed for so many of us. So I guess you could say I'm in the direct lineage of Neem Karoli Baba, just because of the fact that Bhagavan Das came over and I was able to show him one of my childhood toys, which was this monkey stuffed animal that I got from a circus with the sort of almost human looking, really beautiful eyes. And I'm like, look at this, Hanuman. And he was like, you have been the mother of Hanuman your whole life. I will call you Anjani. So I literally got the name given to me from a teacher. It was like, I wasn't really looking for that. It happened. So my whole existence has been to entertain all possibilities. So I'm kind of in the Robert Anton Wilson school of ontology that way, who is another heavy hitter that I've met. And he was a Berkeley dad while I was a Berkeley little girl, and I hung out with his late daughter. So there were just a lot of times I got to be close to the fire. And who would have thought? Like now I'm really more interested and more ready, and my ADHD is settled down enough where I can get a little bit more deep into things. And I'm getting quite interested in Jungian types of thoughts, reading some Jung texts, which are helping me. The non-dualism, I'm finally able to get into a little bit more. And oddly enough, like the Lima is starting to make more sense to me. So whatever you want to call that trifecta of things. And so, yeah, you've caught me at a point where I don't know if my poetry is that spiritual, but my appreciation of all the different possibilities is becoming more and more expansive. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Brother Lantern, can I turn to you, sir, and ask you the same question? One of those experiences that you had in your spiritual path.
Greetings and a Merry Christmas and very happy New Year to everyone. So I was 30 years old and sitting in my house with a wife and young child, and a book dropped onto the floor by the postman. And I had a day off. I picked it up. I started reading, and I went through a series of spiritual experiences. I just couldn't put it down. And I read the book to the very end. I still have it. It's called The Path, Autobiography of a Western Yogi, written by a white American called Donald Walters, whose monastic name at the time was Swami Kriyananda. I was influenced by this man in the ochre-colored saffron robes, long flowing beard, pretty dazzling eyes and a radiant smile, and then his writings, which had a spellbinding effect on me. I had tremendous spiritual experiences. I was 30 years old. I kind of woke to a new life. I woke to the doctrine of reincarnation and the laws of karma, the laws of duality, and a few more things. And I was just a changed person. It's a bit like Christ saying, that which is born of the spirit is spirit, and that which is born of the flesh is flesh. So I was born again, born anew in spirit. 2 weeks later, just 2 weeks later, I found my guru, and I never really looked back since. It cemented my experience in the spiritual life. And I've been, today is my 40th, this year is my 42nd year sitting at the feet of Sri Chinmoy, and who cemented my relationship in the absolute. So what is the absolute to us? For us, there is a perennial entity, a divine ground, a ground of being, which we feel is the same thing, which people call God or Allah. Sri Chinmoy very often uses the word absolute. Sometimes he uses the word absolute supreme. Sometimes he uses the word consciousness. The word consciousness is predominantly an Eastern viewpoint, which is equivalent to the word spirit in the Western viewpoint, spirit with a capital S. So we say that our view is holistic, that there is only the absolute. There's nothing else. There's nothing outside of the absolute. There's only the absolute, solamente the absolute. And that equates to the word spirit with capital S or consciousness with capital C. They call it the Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. And in that teaching, if you want to call it God, God is the life tree, and everything else are the branches of the life tree. Nothing is separate. So to be clearer to my friends who speak of religion and war, we see everything as part and parcel of the whole. So religion has a purpose, war has there's nothing outside of the absolute. Everything comes into being because of the absolute. So we have the creator aspect, if you like. There's the creator, which protrudes itself into something we call the creation, but they're one, inseparable, they're not separate. In the absolute form, there is a silence, and the creation, you could say, is the sound of silence, if you like, but they're one and they merge. sometimes called love, and many rishis and seers and mystics speaks of it as love, and Christ speaks of it as love, and Sri Chinmoy in many of his aphorisms speaks of it as love. The ancient sages talk about us as coming from delight, living in delight, and at the end of our journey's close, returning to delight. There's nothing outside of delight. If it is happening in delight, it has a reason, it has a purpose. And Sri Chinmoy teaches that everything is created by the divine, and it's either approved, sanctioned, or tolerated by the divine. So to us, there is that absolute, very, very consistent with Sri Ramakrishna, very consistent with Sri Krishna, very consistent with the Christ, and very consistent with my Guru. The Buddha took a very wise and firm stance, essentially towards the same thing, because we understand it. But I have to say, he didn't make too much use of the word God. He was much more practical, and he taught in a different way, referring to the same thing. So I don't have too much more to say in that sense, really, because for me, there is only the absolute. We're all gods, if you like, and there's nothing outside of God. The soul is part and parcel, is a spark of consciousness, and all souls are a spark of the eternal, and there's only the eternal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother. Much appreciated. I'm going to turn to my brother, Prasanna Kkumar. Sir, would you like to share your insightful experiences on the path?
I think there are many, sir. What a great congregation of thinking about and talking about the experiences, spiritual experiences that we have. For me, it is like a journey, and it's all about a walkthrough. It's a daily experience, maybe like that. Whenever we daily we take a prayer, praying Almighty. That was the moment we wake up from the bed and till we go to the bed. So it's all about. It's a process. It's a process of learning. It's a process of realizing what is happening with us and around. It's like breathing in and out and realizing the self, and experiencing the pain and the joy. Experience the pain and the joy as well, and it's all about balancing oneself. Not be indulged in the joy ever, or take the pain as hard as pain. But it's an act of God that it's making you realize the fact of how important it is to have a right balance of mind, to get yourself pure, and you should come out like from mud or a flower, like something like that. Landon has said, it's all about Satchidananda, spiritual consciousness and the bliss, attaining the bliss through self-realization and consciousness. The importance of recognizing what it is.
Thank you.
I had quite a vague experiences, that like enlightening spiritual experiences for me. I mean, like 2 weeks back, I had a very it is very shocking for me to share, even to realize the fact that I had that something has happened, which is very much. What would they say that I don't know this, because it is a divine intervention or something like that. He's asking, it's something supreme power is asking me to do something. I mean, it is giving a signal to to have that. I mean, I want to share it in detail. I mean, like while I was as usually we get up and then the next day and we take bath and all. So I was in the bathroom and I was like taking my t-shirt off to have bath. And I found that, kind of, we usually have this vermilion on forehead. So it was there on my chest. And the chest area is where it's considered to be, solar plexus. Solar plexus is considered, we used to usually place this vermilion in the solar plexus area and in the throat and in the forehead. So I found a vermilion mark and, the vermilion and there, and I felt shocked because I haven't applied, the day before. The day before I haven't applied the vermilion over there. And as soon as I started recalling the day, whether I applied the vermilion or not, or something like that, because the other day and the previous day, I was throughout the day, I could just take out the t-shirt and I was wearing that, and doing some exercises. I was sweating. I could see that there was nothing. I could recall that I haven't applied anything during the prayer or something. Whenever but later on, I came to know that I haven't applied at all. But then I felt that it's a kind of signal that has, higher power has asked me to put there, on a regular basis. And from then on, I started putting again. So that is something, spiritual. It's near spiritual experience for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will share one brief little moment with you all. I was traveling out west to a World Family Gathering, a meditation festival with friends, and it struck me that I have not yet done what I call the dream walk. I wanted to go into an isolated place, to a high mountain area, and sit alone until I had that experience, that dream counseling. And so I climbed a mountain and told my friends, listen, if you need to go ahead, I'll meet you there. But if you can stay as long as you can. And I need to be alone. I need to go up on this mountaintop and just sit alone and try to have that dream journey. And no sooner did I get to the top of the mountain, it was dark. So I had my little sleeping bag, laid down, went to sleep. And then the next morning, walking, I'm up on this mountain in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in New Mexico, and I see an Indian, a Native American, walking up the path into my camp. And he stops at the foot of my sleeping bag. I was still in my sleeping bag, dashing notes in my journal. And he said, I dreamt about you last night. And I thought, you're putting me on. This is certainly some kind of joke. I said, obviously, you talked to my friends down in the valley. And he said, no, I'm coming from the other direction. I'm coming from over there. And I said, well, okay, well, thank you. How nice. And he said, no, you're going to go back to Miami and you're going to get a job in television. I said, no, that's impossible. I'm a light show artist. I'm a poet. I'm a painter. I have no credentials for television. I don't know anybody in television. Television is really big on, if you have family in television, you can get in television. I had friends that had broadcast degrees and couldn't get work in television. He said, no, you're going to go back to Miami. And I said, how do you even know that I'm from Florida? And he goes, you're go back to Miami. I don't care where you're from. You're going to Miami. You're going to get a job in television. And I said, it's completely impossible. He said, the thing is, he said, you have the ability in your spirit to understand technology and spirituality, and that's very rare. And you can help people in spirituality understand technology. People in technology understand spirituality. And I said, it's really just not likely. Well, as a matter of fact, I went back to Miami, ended up with a job in television. And even though I started out just as a messenger, ended up getting trained. I was the librarian then. I became a video editor. And so, yeah, he was right. And I knew he couldn't be right, but he was right. So now what I'd like to do is go around, and I've asked each of you to prepare a poem that speaks to your spirituality, speaks to your spiritual insight. I'm going to go ahead and start with Rawle again. So if you haven't got it together, look through your notes. And Rawle, sir, if you would please bring us one of your overtly spiritual poems, sir. You bring so much wisdom in all your work, so I know it's probably hard to pick one, but be our guest, brother. Be our guest.
You just flatter me, my friend. You just flatter me.
I know these fine souls that I have here. I know.
Well, like Debby said, I am honored to be among such esteemed poets and fellow human beings. So this is a piece that I don't know if I'll ever finish it because it is of a spiritual matter. So it changes or I hear something and it triggers something different. But I do like where it's at right now. It's called Shadows in the Light Without Time. The wind invited me into its silence, to go beyond the thin amber horizon into the grace of a kinfolk blessing. Something beautiful came to me that surrounded my unvetted thoughts in the stillness of consciousness. I sat on the summit of imagination, mesmerized by the voices from long ago that gathered in a chorus of melodies. They played a new jazz in the clouds while my soul rejoiced in memories as prayers got lost in their sentiment. From the optimism of a falling rain, a symphony of rainbows appeared to play an opus of forgotten dreams. In the shadows, in the light without time, a realization came in a dance of nostalgia. All is spiritual in this Ubuntu gospel. Sitting anew in something beautiful, I am the sum of all who came before. An unnamed flower awaiting its bee. I am the celebration of the divine within. A flood of poetry filled my love's capacity into my unrealized purpose of balance. I am a master of none, commander of one, a spiritual spark awakened in this illusion, in partnership with the shadows and the light. End of piece.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn to my brother Lantern, sir. If you would share one of your powerful spiritual poems.
Actually, I left out my mystical poems. I wanted to focus on healing, and you know, I send this particular poems to souls who highly appreciative, and I've been doing it for a couple of years, and it's the impact it has on souls and the hope that it brings, and the spiritual qualities of the piece, not a mystical piece, but a deeply spiritual piece. Do not fear, my sweet angel, for while we may fall like leaves discarded in autumn, we will glow like orchids in the light of spring. It sometimes happens that thorns pierces the intruder only to protect the delicate rose. In the same way, just as the essence of strength of a building lies in its foundation, so too the seed of memories burdened by suffering and pain will one day become the necessary flame for the joyfulness of the heart. Be of good cheer, O spirit, for just as in the bitterness of herbs lies the remedy for ancient wounds, so too in the fire of love's magic, a candle with tender wax is bound to be ignited. How can we say that tomorrow's dawn won't bring a sunrise for today's woes? Nothing in divine providence is without purpose. It is in the womb of religion, the night of addictions and desires, that I was concealed before finding solace in the arms of the potter, molding me into a vase of the most magnificent flowers. O lantern, be careful what you give out, as while the dove of love will mix with the light of this beautiful arena, cascading your loving vibrations to the universe, so too the seeds of malice, resentment, and avarice will not only pollute this Gaia of splendor, but return like a boomerang to torment the soul. No matter how dim, there's always light in the abyss. The divine alchemist is ever present, weaving a tapestry of immaculate flowers, all to the glory of love. Every dark shadow is a precursor to the illustrious light of Jannah. Let us continue to give thanks and praise. Anton Carrier, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I'd like to turn to my sister, Debby. My dear, would you share one of your poems with us?
Oh, thank you. I feel like the poems that have gone before me maybe are answering the question in my poem. Who knows? Belief is not an experience. Who is glancing in the mirror, glimpsing repressed convictions, stalking flourishes of idiosyncrasy, synthesis, and wholeness, dispatched by deities, monsters, and heroes? Can science examine and measure individual personality? Not likely. Who is asking, is it mine? No metric exists to judge, nothing to compare with or contrast against. No system prevails to answer the question, what is a self? Are we, as individual selves, a process over which we, as individual selves, have no inherent orchestration? Maybe. Individual self has no beginning. In earnest, we know we don't know how it ends. Can candid stories told around a campfire diagnose mortal existence? Perhaps. Tales of the serpent, open maw, devouring its own tail, must suffice at present. Fleeting, moot, inadequate, a miracle, growing, withering, extinguished. Amid the flux, a kernel endures. In visions, dreams, and revelations dwells a wellspring of myth, evermore abiding. A self is not a creation. A self is a happening. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I have to say, it reminds me of one of my own aphorisms, that God is a verb rather than a noun, and I think that's I'm right there appreciative of your insight. Thank you so much, Alexandra, my dear. May I ask you if you have one to share?
I'll do a short one today.
Thank you, dear.
Sometimes I write a poem simple and light, without complex theories and thoughts of salvation. Simple and light without weighing the cataclysms and epiphanies of humanity. Simple and light without yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's desires. Simple and light as if we have entered the absolute sanctuary.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Your work is so graceful. It's just exquisite work. And I've had the great honor to paint with laser light and paint in planetarium domes with stars and nebula. Your work is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.
We have the technology and the spirituality. We just need Rawle to get the corporal world interested.
Well, I guess all in due time. Some people I've noticed are slow learners. What can you say?
No, let's leave the corporate world out of this because then they'll see the beauty and the magic of it, and then they'll try to capitalize on it. So,
If we could put a price tag on the damn thing, it'd be much better. Brother David, sir, can I trouble you to share your piece next?
Thank you so much. I'll share my screen and we'll see where that takes us. Nobody knows, not even me. Okay, so here we go. Toward the kingdom of the word. 1 second. Thank you for your patience. Okay, the song. 1 second. The Song of Solitude Community. One light and dark sky hovers everywhere, to halo holy places and decrepit alike, under crown jewel constellations scattered over the community of humanity. Magnanimous kindness of quiet stars for all global locals connected by a web. Anonymous earth dwellers, monks, merchants, medics, married lovers who make time to dovetail their own fingers in solitary prayer that paints the air red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I fell in love with the silence of the soul, which brings warm human intuition and reason to their knees in the never-doomed domed temple of midnight Paris, Prague, Istanbul, Mumbai, Rio, Boston, Montreal, and all cities, towns, villages on the omnipresent ground. Stage of the spoken world, changing face of earth. One light and dark sky hovers everywhere and pierces countless hearts of artists, open-minded midnight makers of scriptures, sculptures, pictures, symphonies that symbolize all human longing, feeling, seeking, wanting, prophesying the coming of greater inspiration still. In the company of saints and abundant, undaunted light, the well that gives to all is never empty, but forever replenished and replete with complete knowledge that slakes our thirst for light. We are waves of one unbounded sea of spirit electricity. I whispered into the well of the heart, met by minor echoes, resonance of a temporary rarity, contemporary sincerity. Passionate search for the blue pearl in the private sky of the mind, sacred jewel, summit of the spirit, culmination of all meditation that holds the whole cosmos illumined in its contemplation, being conscious bliss. I sang into the listening air of midnight melodic prayers and murmurs of discouragement, which disappeared in a sequence of seconds, but were stored in the sacred record of everything ever said, sung, murmured, whispered, or simply held in the mind for one minute minute. I wanted to howl, but softly sang raw, off-key questions, which dissolved in sunlight, breakfast chants, and meditation, followed by phone calls to pharmacies and family, plus electronic threads with prospective employers, while walled and window into snowstorm northern Maine morning. Happily writing for nothing, obsessed with nothingness, and from time to time, looking for a living. Under the crested waves of frigid winds which populate the sky with pale crystals, I fell in love with the silence of the soul, though all night I'd intoned the echoed wisdom of weather from a radio speaker that repeated what I said into a lonely microphone tethered to towers that scattered my words to 500,000 satellite dish ears, tuned into practical prophecies for the closest tenants of the planet. Hello, fellow citizens of the world. There is poetry opening everywhere, myriad eyelids of panoramic vision, which begins with the bandwidth of our own outlook. As always, the voice appears in dreams and spills spirit secrets that do not dissolve in daylight. Love helps all the work get done. It's virtual heaven with a sudden survive. God is the only thing that's real and holds the whole dream. Just a jolt would change everything. A little bit of lightning is all you need. Light is might. He threw a window at the sun. Our global open secret God in multicolored, many splendored solitude wears this world to clothe naked light in nature, weather, time, sky, and mind. Hard to see what is behind our eyes. There is light behind the mind, whose only words forever are, I am, I am, I am.
Lovely. Absolutely
Thank you.
lovely. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Prasanna, Kkumar, brother, do you have a poem you'd like to offer us?
Yes, sir. It may not be purely spiritual, but then it has this philosophical take. Third eye, yet to open and gain the vision. The eye of sin is what I seek, believing in. The truth is far to fathom, and in the process of gaining, in the rhythm of having an imagination, notion of fiction always wins to retain the sight of ideation. Truth never appears to shine. False pretense takes precedence. What you see is not a reality, in fact, a chimera of actuality. The fact remains at the corridors of unreality. Got two eyes of unblemished clarity, albeit the mind needs an eye of intuitive validity. This is it. The third
Thank you
eye.
so much. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I have this piece to offer you. Like many of us who have a spiritual bent, I am very much a student of my dreams. My ancient teachers have reminded us that we should pay attention to dreams, that we sometimes use our own internal symbols for those things and the lessons that we conceal. And this poem came directly from the vision of a dream. It's called Temple Lion Dog. Flying o'er the temple zounds, I watch the sacred lion dog roam the gardens fair and temple grounds. His patrols, punctuated with barks and growls, I watched in interest from high above, because you see, that lion dog was also me. During his training to patrol the temple grounds, he'd been given special barks, charmed with sacred magic sparks. Every bark a prayer, his barks profound. These sigils gleamed and glowed in air, full power beams unbounded blare. Sacred barks these powers made, such sounds profound commandeth any shade. Few are aware the subtle war that shrieks beyond the temple door. Sweet in the temple souls seek solace, sanctuary, peace. That glory is only part of the story of the palace. Deep sounds profound, rich in power bound. The lion dog protects the souls that come for sanctuary there amid the scrolls. More, much more than solace, a palace so bright, a torch in the sacred temple light. Yet, just outside, sometimes wicked ghouls who would disturb the troubled sleep of souls who need the temple's sacred peace. The lion dog protects and guards the deep. While I flew o'er, observed, and watched, the lion dog patrolled and never stopped. My vantage point soared from high o'erspread, and suddenly pivot peering, darting deep diving inside the lion dog's head. I watched as dangerous spirits drifted by, almost to dare, and tried at last against the temple wall and gardens pierce, had not the sacred lion dog been so fierce. As lion dog I strolled the garden's border, warned them off, sure they'd spawn some macabre disorder. Some might scoff as I watched the lion dog drive them off. These drifting spirits mischief sought, would float by dreaming lest the lion dog stop. The lion dog barked and warned them away. They'd flee his massive jaws, these shades would shrink before his awesome law. Keeping demons from the ground, his guardianship was more powerful than mortal eye might see, or any mortal ear bear the sound. Which shades those wizards sent to temple to dissemble, that thereby acolytes might shriek and tremble, though the enemies of the temple crow and bray. That's why our patrolling lion dog in his sacred voices say, we are trained for courage, and on sacred blessed food are nourished. Thus our strong walls protect, that the temple might flourish. While I, on guard our grounds from villains and demons, which I knew and sensed even when they were scarcely seen. The lion dog bounds across the grounds, patrolling the temple from any noisome sound. I watched as villains tried to worry, shake the gentle vibrations of this sacred space. While I on patrol spotted villains near, I'm bound to face them and shame their fear. My barking was marked in air by floating sigils like monks, marking ancient scrolls and vigils. These floated as if in marking barking signals. As lion dog I mark the border. A sacred guardian protects the ancient order. Thank you, my friends. Now, we're going to turn from poetry to ask a couple of questions and answer them. I'm going to ask you, of course, to keep your answers as brief as you can be. Our sister Whisper Poet asked this question last time and asked us to address it. And the question is this: are you troubled by what sometimes seems like a difference between science and the mystic? Or are you reconciled in this? So her question essentially is, how do you deal with that? Or do you see no opposition there? I'm going to turn first to my brother Rawle. Science, mystic?
I think they both coincide at the same time. One is neither right nor wrong. Science cannot prove God does not exist or God exists, and religious people cannot prove science is wrong. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of your perception and how you view things. And if you have that belief that you have the right to hold those thoughts, then so do others. So I think there's times I think science tries to prove God exists, not so much that God doesn't exist. Because many scientists are men and women of faith. So I think they coincide. You know, it's like the blueprint of the universe. You know, the yin and yang. You have to have both to understand the whole. You cannot just have one part of it and think you understand the whole. This is why I don't necessarily believe in absolutes in that regards, right? You know, the absolute is actually the line that goes between the polar opposites. So yeah, I think they both coincide and they both have value. And then it's just a matter of you know, like it's like the old saying, you know, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. The truth lies not.
Sir, let me ask you that same question. Science and mystic arts, how do you reconcile? Do you see a contrast? Your thoughts, sir.
In Sri Chinmoy's philosophy, science and spirituality run side by side. This takes me back to the absolute as the life tree and its branches. You could say that love is the life tree, or light. People talk about light, and that science is one of the branches of the life tree. There's only a matter of a minor difference, you know, because what Prasanna is talking, when he talks about self-realization, for self-realization to take place, the mind becomes silent. We go beyond the mind to enter the regions of the heart, the mystical heart. And there, at that point, science comes to a standstill. But before that, it runs side by side with the divine. Science can give us what the purpose of life, which we call self-realization, or the knowledge of our true self, because by nature it is using the mind, it is using academic knowledge, it is using scholarship, whereas the essence of the yogi is mystical in the sense that it goes to the metaphysical, which is beyond the mind. And the experience happens when the mind falls silent. At that point, there is no more science, but pure spirituality.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Alexandra, did I miss you on one?
No, I was just going to say that there's no such thing as settled science. Science is constantly evolving and developing, and things that we thought were correct years ago. Pascal thought that the virus creates the disease, and on his deathbed he said the virus just goes to the already diseased cell. But in the same way, I also believe that religion isn't settled either, because I am not erasing the importance of the light beings who have come to Earth to help humanity, starting from Ra, the Indo-European mystic, all the way through the Krishna, the Greek philosophers, and mystics like Pythagoras and Plato. Yeah, and all the way to Jesus, of course, who were the ancient mystics, and Moses. And there's a lot more mystics than that. But religion has evolved over the centuries. In the beginning, they were adhering to certain rules that the religion imposed on people. And slowly, even on the very spiritual people, they had to take oaths of obedience and being poor, or certain oaths anyway, that nothing would ever be revealed. But this is no longer the case. Since then, humanity has evolved spiritually, and now we can freely talk about our own personal mystical experiences. So I think that they are both evolving and nothing is settled.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Debby, let me ask you, my dear, how do you reconcile science and the mystic? Do you see a conflict or an interlocking? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, thank you. Well, your original question from Whisper was, am I troubled? And so that was where I kind of went with, and I'm feeling very untroubled due to the fact that I live in an eon in which philosophy has occurred. I would have maybe been troubled if I had been prior to Plato and not been able to take in some of the philosophy and mysticism that has been told, or written or spoken. So I look at it like science, spirituality. It's like a Venn diagram with philosophy in it. And philosophy is difficult, though. I wish I had gotten a handle on it sooner, like in high school or college, where I just kind of like read the Cliff Notes or whatnot. But no, it's all there. And another thing I want to say is that in the Western ceremonial tradition or magic, there is a science quality to the spirituality where results and things are measured when performing certain ceremonies. So, like, no, I'm absolutely not troubled. I don't know why I said absolutely. I'm inherently not troubled. And so thank you for that wonderful question and the answers that have come before me and the answers to come after me.
Thank you so much. Always keen insight. Brother David, sir, how do you think about these things?
I'm not troubled either. If the truth can be stated as everything is consciousness and thou art that, than the science that is constantly unfolding. And yes, there's a theory today and it could be refuted tomorrow. And the spirituality is constantly unfolding. We have one experience after another that may reveal more and more to us as we go along. So I'm not troubled at all. And I'll just quote Tesla, who said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's something that a mystic could just as easily say. So anyhow, I'm not troubled.
Thank you so much. Prasanna, sir, do you have some thoughts on this as well?
Should not go much into the technicality of science and spirituality. I certainly believe there is, to some extent, science plays a role in spiritual part, and but it doesn't go beyond. To some extent, it has its effect, but then metaphysical, like Lattice said, it has limitation. The science has its limitation, so it's beyond that. Spirituality is beyond that. So
Thank
that
you
is
so much, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I when I was very troubled, I was one of those young people that was very much a scientist and science oriented. And thank goodness I found a mystic who allowed me to use my science logic in my spiritual reality. There are mountains and rivers and waters and clouds, and that's all true. In another way of looking at that same phenomena, there are roadways and highways and urban spaces and country spaces, which is another true and valid way of looking at it. So when I get to deal with medicos who I've had some interaction with over the last year, I think, okay, you have your logic and your way of mapping physical reality, and I have that, but I also have another alternative energy map that I apply as well. So thank you all for your very, very thoughtful remarks. Another question that our sister has raised and asked us to think about was she advanced a theory. She said that, as many of us assume as a given, that we're all spiritual beings, that we all have the capacity to perceive these subtler energies. But some people demonstrably, ask them, they don't see it, they don't get it, they don't feel it, they don't appreciate it. And her argument was she felt that trauma might be the key to keep that youthful awareness of subtler energies. I don't know if that's the only explanation, but that was her theory, and she asked us to reflect on that. So I'm going to go ahead and go around the room again, ask you to be brief, because there's another question I want to ask you that I think are also entertaining. So Rawle, sir, do you think that how do you explain that loss for so many of the subtler experiences?
Well, I mean, this whole life is trauma to begin with. So, when we say that maybe the trauma and blinds the innocence, and the innocence is more prone to understanding, or a lot of people, to really understand God, you have to be able to still go back to be a child, like a newborn knows God, because it just came from God. Maybe, I don't know. All I know is everything, the science, the mystic, is in our minds. Philosophy, it comes from the mind. A lot of what we speak of comes down to perception, how you see things. A lot of it can't be proven. I think it's not so much the trauma, but we have to live this life in order to get to a place where we start questioning life. And we're not void of trauma or suffering. That is part of the journey. I think we look at it in the wrong way, because when we talk about resiliency, where does resiliency come from? It comes from the traumas of life. The ability to be knocked down and to stand back up, and to be knocked down and to be stand back up, kind of like the blueprint of the universe, right? The destructive creative force that creates life. So I don't know. All I can say is everything comes from the mind. I cannot prove God wrote the 10 Commandments. The question I was asked, who was there to know that? Who was there? Science needs to be scrutinized and tested. Your theories need to be tested and tested until someone says, okay, it's been proven correct. But what does correct mean? So from a philosophical standpoint, you can go around in circles. At the end of the day, it's make up your own damn mind. What do you believe? Because if we are all spirit, then everything we do is spiritual, not some things, all things. Even the trauma is spiritual. So.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Brother Lantern, sir, what is your reflection on this idea of why are some people still appreciating the subtlety? We know the ancients said, "Be like a child." What's your thought on that, sir?
Because this lila, this divine game, is divine that way. I was once a child, I became a toddler, I became a teenager, and then I became an adult. So too with spiritual evolution. The microscopic is the same as the macroscopic. There is no essential difference, but there are different levels of growth. We're all wayfarers, sojourners, seafarers, seekers, which is the modern term, as Prasanna said, but we are at different stages of the journey. We are at different stages of the journey. We each have different toolboxes, and that's related to our karma, our state, or level of evolution or growth on reincarnation. There's so much complex. There's the laws of what the Supreme works with, and we're all at different stages, and that's essential. I love Rawle's work because I was drawn to it from the very beginning by his images. Karen is entirely different. She focuses on justice, and it is right that her toolbox pushes her to do what she's doing. It is right that my sister is a journalist and my brother was a headmaster in school. It's like flowers in a garden. The lavender and the jasmines are incredibly fragrant, but a rose gives us sacrifice, self-offering, and charm. And diversity is necessary. The creation cannot function if there is only sameness. So souls are at different stages of the evolutionary journey. The difference between Christ and myself is because of a level of growth. Each soul comes into existence with the same potential, but each soul are growing at different stages of the journey. This is how the divine Leela works. And it's tied up with many things. The universe has its own cosmic laws, which pushes us or encourages us, or whatever the word is, coerces us to be where it wants us to be. Even the ant is meant to be where it is. Everything is happening with precision. So I go back to the creator. We fail to see the picture when we separate the creator from his creation.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Alexandra, what's your thoughts on this, my dear?
I feel like you're asking us to answer, why do we have enlightened souls and Hitlerish souls and everything in between? So,
in a way of looking at it, that's absolutely the question. Sure.
Which is kind of difficult. All I know is that we have free will. And even if you were rejected at art school, like Hitler was, you can just deal with it in certain ways. So I have no idea why some people wage wars and others peace. I don't know. I guess, like Lantern said, we're on different points in the path, but maybe it's a whole lot more complicated as well, like karma, echoing the deeds of past lives. So yeah, I really cannot fathom the souls of dictators.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Debby, let me turn to you, my dear. What are your thoughts? Some people seem to still have perception. They keep that childlike innocence, and some people, I guess, with a hardened shell, don't.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. It goes to faith and doubt. And I feel like myself, I was a much more rigid, doubting soul when I was a youth. I I remember one of my earliest inquiries was like, if there's a God, and I stood on this slope in my front yard when I was about 4. If there's a God, I'm going to take a really giant leap and you're going to propel me and I'm going to fly. Like, this is it. And I would literally, that was my spiritual practice to find out if God was really there. And so I prayed, I'm going to leap now. Like, now, like, if you let me fly, I'm going to be a believer. And of course, I never flew. I flew a lot in my dreams. Reality, I didn't fly. And so another thing I used to do at the age of 5 or 6 is raise all these points in Jewish Sunday school that with the Bible stories where I was like, that's ridiculous. Joseph was being such a jerk, and he really thought that that was cool to be like, hey, everybody, like my dreams were showing I'm really special and you're not. I would raise these points. And I didn't really get very far with my Jewish education as a little kid. So I was pretty rigid and a skeptic. And so for some reason, I was able to open up my points of view and entertain more possibilities. So yeah, I don't know. And also, I even hold space for evil and good. Like, it's all there. It's all there. Something I just read recently in the Western ceremonial tradition kind of knocked my socks off, which helped explain why there's a Hitler and various things. So like, I'm not smart enough to write that book, but I'm at least open enough to read that book and not throw it against the wall. That's my answer to
that. Thank you. Brother David, sir.
I don't know why there's such difference in the spiritual sensitivity of different people. I can only look at my own life, my evolution. Let's say in Sanskrit, jada, inert, and so I used to like have a cup of coffee even before going to bed, and I would still be fine. But as I've done more and more spiritual practices and become more alive and awake and refined and sensitive to spiritual energy, I can have coffee in the morning, stop, and then I'm still feeling it in the middle of the night and I can't sleep. And so I just sit up and meditate for however long until I feel ready. Well, maybe I can lie down and try the sleep thing again. So now my system has been purified by all these practices so much that I'm not as insensitive to not just things like coffee, but to vibrations. And so that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Prasanna, sir, do you have any thoughts on this matter? Why are some people appreciative of subtleties and others need to get a whack on the head, so to speak?
It's all about, every soul has this evaluation, and it has its own time to get evolved. That's what I believe. One is certainly you could see someone is being very enlightened, some is being very low, and is very is in the process of knowing or learning. Some is already evolved. It's all about, depends. Every soul has its path of, reaching out to higher self. That is what I believe.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to answer that same question this way. After reading a lot about out-of-body travel, astral travel, whatever you want to call it, I was interviewing a psychic, a palm reader, and I had to say that I was skeptical of palm reading would really just not even come close. I thought it was hilarious, and I almost did it more of a joke. But I tried to look at all these different mental disciplines as something to understand, to understand it, to hear it, to experience it. And this woman said I would meet 2 gentlemen who would teach out-of-body travel. And so I said, well, number one, she said this would happen early in the morning. I said, well, look, I live in nightlife. I'm an artist and a musician. I'm awake from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'm not going to meet anyone in the morning. That's just out of the question, so forget about it. Well, meanwhile, I get drafted, and I had to report to downtown Hollywood, Florida at 6 a.m. So here I am down on the street in Hollywood, Florida at 6 a.m., and I see this gentleman standing across the street from me, and there's just two of us. This town is empty. There's no one in town, but there's one guy standing across the street from me, and he was, I'm gonna say, he was a gay gentleman, and he was standing waiting to get into a hairdressing salon. And in that part of my life, I'd been trained to be fearful of homosexuality. So I was standing there on my side of the street, you know, being masculine or something. And he said, listen, I'm not going to attack. He totally got where I was. He said, look, I'm not going to attack you. You know, we're just both standing here. We might as well talk. And I said, you know, you're absolutely right. So I went over and talked, and he said, well, you know, I've been expecting to meet you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there we go. And he said, no, you're interested in out-of-body travel, and that's what I teach. And I said, oh, no, oh, God, no, not interested at all. Never mind. No. He said, no. And I thought, yeah, but see, she said there'd be two guys, and this is only one guy. This is totally wrong. And he goes, and my partner will be here in just a minute. He teaches it too. And I went, oh, shit. So I learned a lot in the next 6 months about how not to be totally a bullshit, uptight, masculine man, and appreciate that there's all kinds of different sexuality in the world. And the point I was ultimately getting at is when I had the experiences of out-of-body travel, I said to myself, now, I don't have the resources to go fact check all the things that I learned, but the truth seemed to me that if you gained insight into yourself, into your relationships, that was valid insofar as it was valid. You don't need to prove the facts, the details, you know, go to Cleveland, Ohio to find where, you know, but if it makes sense, if you learn something, then it's helpful. So I take that consideration that some people seem to be very subtle, very appreciative of subtle energy, and some people just don't get it. You know, that's their world is not including those frequencies, their bandwidth, if you will, to use an electromagnetic term. Their bandwidth just doesn't include those subtle energies. Now, I want to ask you one other question. Then I'm going to ask you to close with a poem. The last question I want to ask you is, in this country, with these strange political changes that we've just experienced, there are people who really, really, really want to inculcate their religious teachings in the public schools. Now, of course, in America, public schools mean the schools that the public pays for that are free to everyone, not a private school as in overseas. I'm going to ask you, do you think it's a good idea to teach religion? And of course, here they're referring to only one religion, the only one religion that is officially in their political spectrum, a certain kind of Christianity. So do you think that teaching a certain kind of Christianity in public schools is a good idea or a bad idea? Let me start with you, Rawle.
Very interesting question. I'll start off by this. Like I said, I'm not a religious man, but I do see truth in many things and in all things. In the book of Job, Job 1:6, and I'll paraphrase, when the angels of God went to pay homage to God, even Lucifer showed. I always found that to be a very interesting passage. If God is so powerful, then why does Lucifer still show? Or if God is so powerful, why can't he deal with Lucifer? And that passage has always said to me that it's all God, because everything is spiritual. Some people may not want to hear this, but Hitler's sitting in heaven if God is real, because Hitler did what was asked of him, the soul contract that was signed long ago. Some will say no. I say Christianity will be taught in schools by those who have the power. We can sit and say it shouldn't. I'm one of those people that believe if you're going to teach Christianity, then you have to teach all the other religions, because there's not just one religion on this planet. There's not just one viewpoint on this planet. So it comes down to who's right, who's wrong. It's not so much who's right, who's wrong. It's who has the power. It's always been that way. The ones with the power will teach what they believe is right or wrong. Some believe they have more of a moral high ground. They have some sort of a grasp on morality over others, and they think they know how others should live. And they're entitled to that opinion. And then there's others that oppose that opinion, and they're entitled to that. At the end of the day, it still comes down to the ones with power, which we do not always want to accept. We don't always like. So this is why we will constantly have this battle. In this physical understanding of time and space right now, I pay attention to how the universe works. And you cannot have war without peace. You cannot have peace without war. We can wish it all we want, just like we could wish all religions are taught. But at the end of the day, from what I've observed, I'm not saying what I've observed is right, it's just what I have observed. It's the ones with power, the ones with the big stick, that determines what the rest of the sheep will do. You know, I've observed that maybe 5% of the population has this sense of spiritual understanding. The other there's another 5% that what you would consider just pure evil. Because I accept there are people in this world that just want to blow up the world. And then the 90% follow the whatever they're told. And although they're following, they're still fighting, thinking that they're exercising free will, while all along they're following what those in power dictate. So I don't know if it's a right or wrong sort of question or answer, because to me, power is not about right or wrong. It's just an exercise of will.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you, Legendary, sir, what do you think about teaching one religion in particular in schools?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, repeat that. Teaching one religion. Was that what you said initially?
Yeah, there is a political force in this country right now that really wants to make Bible training of a peculiar type of Christianity universal in public schools, in the free schools of the public. And I was just asking you to weigh in. What do you think about teaching religion in a mandatory religion in schools?
Well, we see that the Soviet model didn't succeed. I mean, we have the greatest number of our students come from the Soviet Union. When they tried to impose a particular doctrine, they simply went underground. And one of the good things that Gorbachev did was to bring back that kind of freedom. And suddenly they were rushing from Russia like in droves. We have over probably 2,000 students of our 8,000 in Russia alone. Because what you do, if you try to put things in boxes, if you try to create, Vivekananda used to say, narrowness is death, expansion is life, narrowness is death, you know? If you try to restrict freedom, then the nature of the soul is such that it will kick against it. But again, I suspect that the urge is coming from the Creator itself, because I see the Creator in everything. To me, there is no such thing as free will. The sages talk about what they call limited freedom. But they say we like cows tied to a long rope. And it's only when we stray into the neighbor's garden, we suddenly realize we're tied. It is only when we lying on a hospital bed dying of, I don't know, God forbid, I'm sensitive to you, Richard, but I'm going to say cancer because I need to demonstrate what I'm trying to say. Then we suddenly realize that free will is taken from us. We move from a position of independence to a position of dependence. So everything is happening because of the Creator's will. But initially, when you in the beginning when you spoke of the question, I was thinking of the fact that there are changes happening in American universities, that people are teaching mindfulness, and that the children who do very well, they found that the children who do very well tend to have a period of mindfulness day after day, and they reevaluated it after 2 years. A little bit of science comes in here, which is very quite invaluable. And London is doing the same thing. And in Sri Chinmoy Center, we have 2 schools who are excelling to such an extent, patients are rushing to send their children to our schools because the children begin their day with mindfulness, they end the day with mindfulness, and in between, they have positive affirmations. So we're talking a lot about proof. I mean, proof is, I see it as a mental thing, but at least they're able to demonstrate to a certain extent that it does work.
Thank you. Thank you. Rawle, you had another comment you wanted to make.
Well, I just thank you for, I just wanted to say, again, it's these absolutes, right? Whenever you're moving, right now, America, the world is in this state of discomfort. And a lot of the discomfort is because we're moving away from traditions that we, for generations, centuries, have lived by. So with the advent of technology, innovation, your Christian way of life, that's nothing new. That's what they came from. And that way of life bred these generations who have a different freedom of thinking that doesn't feel restricted by a book or an understanding of a deity that floats around in a cloud waiting to throw lightning bolts at you every time you F up. So there's a battle of these absolutes. That's why I said the true absolution is on the line between these two, right? This battle of, is America a Christian nation? No, America is a nation maybe founded by Christians that allows other religions within it. And I say allow because they're the ones with the power. But what's really going on is this battle of understanding, a battle of philosophy, a battle of which way is right, which way is wrong. And life and history has taught me we kind of flow back and forth. And if we move to a place where religion is taken out, we may live like that for centuries and then eventually fight for something that we once did thinking that it's brand new, because there's nothing new under the sun. So, this is why I said in certain things I don't believe in the absolute, but Lantern and I say the same things in a different way. It's all part of the designer's plan. Because Indeed. How do you know good without bad?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Alexandra, let me turn to you, my dear. What do you think about teaching mandatory religion in schools?
Yeah, I think Lantern and Rawle are talking about compatibilist free will in philosophical terms. In Greece, they teach Orthodox Christianity, but don't forget that we're talking about children. And I don't think that the minds of children are that far developed into having explored their spiritual potential. So a lot of the children, they just do it like, they're not really interested. The ideas just go through, they infiltrate and then they just go out the other side. It's the least interesting lesson for them at school. So I would say that because we are becoming a global society and America is multicultural, that the right thing to do would be to kind of teach a history of all religions. And that would be the fairest to all kind of mystics who actually formed the religions initially, but we have moved on since then. And all religions lead to the absolute anyway. So, and much more than that. It's not just through religion, but I think at least they could see it as a religion, historical, a history of religion class, like we do history of art. So that would be more interesting, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you. Debbie, let me ask you, my dear, what do you think? Mandatory Christianity in schools?
Oh, hell no. No, no,
Thank you.
no. Like they already, I guess they weren't teaching it when I was a little kid, but how in the heck did I grow up having a toy play Noah's Ark? Like I was already indoctrinated with, oh, it's completely reasonable that God, who you're telling me is all kind, wonderful, knowing, really thought that there was one cat that was good and the whole rest of the planet had to be drowned in a flood. So it's already happening. Yes, no. Comparative religion can start at the age of kindergarten, and when they do the section on Christianity or on Judeo-Christianity, then please have the book of Job be like, this is the one we're going to focus on. And then please have the Sermon on the Mount be the other one we focus on. And then we move on. And let's generate people that can be agnostic. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, my dear. Brother David, sir.
I don't think it's a good idea because it would always be, this is the true way, everything else is bad. This is what is perfect and right to follow. Everything else is the other, the evil, or what have you. Because it's a controlled single path, and everything has to fit into it, and if it doesn't, it's evil or what have you. I think it would be a terrible mistake. Even if I think that starting a spiritual learning is great for kids at an early age, and then they contemplate and find their own way. But it's like my ex-wife was left-handed, and she would be holding the spoon in her left hand, and her parents would put it in her right, and then she kept moving it back to her left hand. So there's different paths for different people, and I think it'd be like a total control operation, and willfully making everyone like us. Otherwise, they're terrible.
Well, I have a lot of sympathy for Debbie's point of view. Look, God, I wouldn't do that. I don't think if you think God does that stuff, you're out of your mind. I'm with her. I think if they did it, it would make an awful lot of atheists real quick. Okay, and now for our last adventure of the day, I would like you to read one short piece of your own in any vein that speaks to your truth. So I'm going to start in reverse and start with David this time. David, read us one more piece, please.
Thank you. So I'll just do a sonnet to keep it short, and I'll share my screen again. This one was published in Amethyst Review, very spiritual journal. Sonnet on Otherness. My bones, my breath, my thoughts, my wants, my I, my me, my mind, I throw into the bright white fire of light that sways my spine. With power to reveal the real, even darkness can be kind. The night that will conceal and seal the shade in which all things can shine. Our air that births both you and me and helps our hearts restart their beat is everywhere it needs to be, gives and yet remains complete. If I didn't have the sense of other, would I ever suffer?
Okay. My dreams pure froth, unstoppable waves. Incessantly moving forward, small and large, calm and swelling, shallow and deep. Each crest the perfection of my reality. Improvising with silvery dolphins towards an uprising and declining horizon. Just keeping it really short.
Thank you so very much. That was lovely, both beautiful and eloquent. Thank you, my dear. Debby, do you have one you might offer us?
Sure, but first I have to share a left-handed spoon, which you won't be able to see because my partner had a mother that was different than David's partner's mother. Like, this is a mother that just sent him a left-handed spoon for his Christmas gift because he's left-handed. Anyway, I'm going to share. The universe is a verb, Richard. This is the title of my piece. I'm going to share. The universe is a verb. Attention, please, comrades. Regular people innovating from anywhere there's a USB port. Builders of mythic systems from mundane substances. Happenstance. We build a life. We hold our cards close to the chest where the heart beats. In the untried happenings, amid dopamine theories and conspiracy queries. Jolly lurching to the hungry ghost bonfire to be fed and obliterated. Spawned in the age of Aquarius, propagating intangible knowledge, professing planetary shifts. Circles unbroken, openings closed. We waited, we tolerated. Doubt crept in. Someone shouted, "We're either going to live forever or we're not." No time to explain. Hug a cactus and get in. Right now, here in this body, is where life is. Plugged in, watchful, being, becoming, easing into the quantum leap. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Brother Lantern, sir, would you share one more with us?
Thank you. Here I'm using words to try to convey spiritual experiences. You cannot really prove the experience. One needs to taste the mango to know that it's sweet. And the whole purpose of yoga is to go within, and everything else unfolds in its own nature. Meditation. Mind still, calm, serene, and vacant. I'm transported by the soul's beauty into the inner realm of deep tranquility and vastness. It is like being entranced on the bed of the ocean, where everything is hushed, silent, peaceful. On the surface, there's a multitude of waves, but I'm in an aquamarine realm of sweet solitude. I reach out to my lover, my essence filled with the breath of an ambrosial wine. Tears flow from my inner sanctum, orchestrated by a bliss celestial, merging into the pangs of humanity's deepest sorrows. From the depth of a nameless void, I speak to my beloved in silence. Full prostration, palms outstretched in reverence, I entreat. Oh, love, please accept my prayerful tears as a token offering on behalf of your creation. I feel a flowering of my being, merging into the singer of my songs. We become one, beating the cadences of love's victory with heaven's supernal gong. Receptive to the wings of love, I pay homage to the one in the deep stillness of the heart's peace, the unspoken sweetness in the profundity of my soul.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Brother Rawle, sir, would
Yes,
you
sir.
bring us
Thank you.
round?
Lantern, I love that piece. It reminds me of the collaborative piece we did a while back.
Yeah.
That I'm actually going to extract my piece. I actually did, because it's a poem by itself, and I'm going
And
to
when
work
it's
on that.
good, man, it's good. Go with it.
Yeah, because I when I extracted it out, and then I looked at what I wrote, just what I wrote, not the collaborative effort. It was like, oh, there's some potential here. So you reciting that reminded me of that, and then also reconfirm my goal for 2025 is to get back to reciting more. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed this. So thank you for that, Lantern. I'll share this piece. It's called "The Space Between Space." I reside in a whisper within the space between space that urges me to contemplate all things that surround me. From the initial spark, I was embedded on the path to learn, searching for meaning in life's turbulent storms. Time melts away into the light. The blinders gradually fall to spotlight the silver lining of the wisdom that lies within. Suspended in a moment, riding my wave of suffering, I've been guided back, forward to the unknown. A force ascends vertically, the essence of contrast unleashed, a cleansing, healing power upon my battered soul. The waters recede back to the vastness of the designer. Fragrance of my being returned as gratitude for the experience. Through the diverse trials encompassed in life's spectrum, my forgiveness stands at the ready, always at the ready, a whisper of my love embraced. End of piece.
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you, brother. That was gorgeous. All of you, I can't thank you enough. I'm going to leave you with this poem, a very solemn piece, as befitting the infinite in front of us here. That all your plans are gone and wrecked when you're sad, mad, glad, or parenthetically had, or simply had by something evil or not quite bad. You may stutter and stammer too when you're in a jam, do you? Reach at length for something potent, like a ducal regent or a missing museum docent. Grab a hold of something rash. Now I'm not talking bags of cash, or sitting cross-legged, smoking bowls of pungent Turkish hash, or some such spice that makes your pleasures soar or roar down gleaming canyons slick as glacier ice. Now, I'm not suggesting, even insisting that you measure another dollop out, and when you whisper or you shout, grab yourself a hearty laugh, and sure, you'll cut your woes in half, cut them, splice them, mince them very, drown them in a steaming cup of berry, pull their leg and tug their hair. You might find a generous touch of merriment there, and when they've got you in a box, or the holes have worn through both shoes and socks, lean right back and give a chuckle, even though it might bend your strongest buckle. All these things, so tough and stringy, no more than a pretty propeller on your beanie, or a small mustache painted over the picture of Mastodon. Give yourself a hearty laugh, and sure, by the clover in your garden, you'll cut your woes in half. Thank you, my friends. May you have the happiest of holidays. Your generosity, I find overwhelming. Thank you.
Wait. You can't just, no.
Do you think that you might be a reincarnation of Dr. Seuss?
You don't just get to get off that scotch-free after that piece. Come on. That's brilliant.
Any poem with a beanie with a propeller in it, I'm a follower. I'm a follower of you.
I'm sure Jesus and God is sitting there going, oh my God, you made him. You made him.
I didn't do that. Thank you, my dear friends. You have enriched our day, and you are a blessing to our community. Thank you.
This is a godsend.
Thank you, Richard. You're also a blessing to our community, and I'm sure everyone would thank you and show extreme gratitude for you hosting this platform where we can exchange ideas which may serve other people in the community and around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And
Please
have
do
a
more.
wonderful holiday, all of you.
Yes, happy holidays, people. Love you all.
Bye.